In a shocking courtroom moment, a neighborhood Karen pulled out her phone and started filming Judge Judy without permission. But what security found on that phone was far worse than anyone could have imagined. The gavel slammed down with fury, security rushed in, and what happened next left the entire courtroom in absolute stunned silence. Her brazen act has sparked endless speculation. Was it pure entitlement? A desperate attempt to go viral? Or was she hiding something even more sinister? Stay tuned as we uncover the explosive truth behind this unforgettable moment that has the entire internet talking. The courtroom lights gleamed off the polished wooden benches as cameras rolled, capturing every moment for millions of viewers across America. The audience sat in silent attention, all eyes fixed on Judge Judy's iconic bench where justice was about to be served. Seated in the gallery was Karen, a woman whose presence seemed to radiate entitlement. She watched the proceedings unfold with an unsettling smirk on her face, shifting in her seat as if she owned the place. It was supposed to be just another day in America's most famous courtroom. Another case, another verdict, another display of Judge Judy's legendary no-nonsense justice. Then without warning it happened. Karen's hand slowly reached into her oversized designer purse. Her fingers fumbled for a moment before pulling out her smartphone. She glanced around nervously, checking if anyone was watching, then positioned the phone directly toward Judge Judy. The angle was unmistakable. She was recording. Her thumb moved across the screen. Her lips curled into a satisfied smile, thinking she was getting away with it. But Judge Judy's sharp eyes that had seen thousands of liars and schemers, caught the movement instantly. The room seemed to freeze for a split second before Judge Judy's gavel came crashing down with a thunderous bang that echoed through the entire courtroom. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice cut through the air like a knife. Security mobilized immediately, moving toward Karen's seat with purpose. The courtroom audience gasped, some turning in their seats to see what was happening. Karen's face went pale, then red, her eyes wide with shock and defiance. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every single second of Karen's humiliation, and America was watching. If you can't wait to see how Judge Judy absolutely destroys this entitled Karen, and what shocking secrets were hiding on that phone, smash that like button right now, and subscribe because we're about to expose every single detail of her public takedown. Let's get into it. Judge Judy's voice sliced through the stunned silence like a blade. "Bailiff!" The command was absolute, leaving no room for negotiation. Two security officers immediately moved toward Karen's seat, their faces stern and professional. Every eye in the courtroom followed their movement, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Karen looked up at the approaching officers, and instead of showing even a hint of remorse or embarrassment, her face twisted into defiance. She clutched her phone tighter against her chest as if it were her lifeline. "What, I'm just recording. It's a public courthouse," she shouted, her voice dripping with entitlement. The audacity of her words sent a ripple of disbelief through the audience. Judge Judy leaned forward on her bench, her eyes narrowing into that legendary withering stare that had made criminals and liars crumble for decades. "This is my courtroom," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Did you ask permission?" Karen's jaw dropped slightly, but she quickly recovered, puffing up her chest with false confidence. "I don't need permission. I have rights," she fired back, her voice getting louder and more shrill. The courtroom audience shifted uncomfortably. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered to each other, shocked at this woman's audacity. Judge Judy's expression didn't change. If anything, it became colder. "You have the right to be escorted out. Bailiff, confiscate that phone." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Karen's eyes went wide with rage. She shot up from her seat so fast the chair behind her scraped loudly against the floor. "You can't take my property. This is America," she screamed, her face now turning a deep shade of crimson. Her hands trembled as she clutched the phone even tighter, her knuckles turning white. The entitled rage radiating from her was palpable, and the entire courtroom watched in horrified fascination. Judge Judy remained completely calm, unmoved by the theatrics. "In America, we follow rules. You broke them. Now face the consequences." Her voice was ice-cold, final. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no, she had one more card to play, the card entitled "People Always Pull When They Know They're Wrong." Her voice suddenly changed, becoming shaky and wounded. "This is discrimination," she cried out, her eyes welling with crocodile tears. "You're targeting me because of my size. You wouldn't do this to a thin person." The courtroom erupted in gasps. Some audience members' mouths fell open in shock. Even the bailiffs exchanged quick glances of disbelief. Judge Judy slowly stood up from her bench, her full authority on display. "I am targeting you," she said, emphasizing each word with precision, "because you broke my rules. Your size has nothing to do with your entitlement. Your character does." The words landed like hammer blows. Karen stood frozen, her victim card rejected completely. The security officers moved in, no longer waiting for permission. One of them held out his hand. "Ma'am, the phone, now." His voice was firm but professional. Karen looked around desperately, hoping anyone would come to her defense. But the courtroom remained silent. Slowly, reluctantly, her hand opened and the officer took the phone from her grasp. Karen's face went through a range of emotions in seconds. Shock, disbelief, humiliation, rage. She had played the victim card, the one that usually worked, the one that made people back down out of fear of being called discriminatory. But not here. Not with Judge Judy. Sit down or leave. Choose now. Judge Judy's final command left no room for argument. Karen's lips trembled. Her fists clenched, but she sat down, collapsing into her chair with a thud, her face burning with shame and fury. The entire courtroom watched as this entitled woman, who had moments ago been so confident in her rights and her victimhood, was utterly destroyed by 5 simple words. She sat there fuming, humiliated, defeated. But as the audience would soon discover, this was just the beginning of Karen's terrible, terrible day. But who was this woman? And why would she risk everything to film Judge Judy without permission? As the story began to unfold, the truth became even more disturbing than anyone in that courtroom could have imagined. Her name was Sharon Mitchell, but everyone in her neighborhood knew her by a different name, Karen. And she had earned that title through years of entitled, toxic behavior that had made her the most hated person on her block. Sharon was the neighborhood busybody, the kind of person who made everyone's life miserable simply because she could. Her history of entitlement was legendary among those unfortunate enough to live near her. She had called the police on children playing outside because they were too loud, even though it was the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday. She had harassed delivery drivers for parking in front of her house, screaming at them and threatening to have their vehicles towed even when they were clearly making deliveries to other homes. She had threatened to sue multiple neighbors over property lines, claiming inches of land that weren't hers, forcing peaceful families to spend thousands on surveys just to prove her wrong. Every interaction with Sharon ended the same way, with her playing the victim and threatening legal action. But here's what made this courtroom incident even more calculated and sinister. Karen wasn't even in court for her own case. She was there supporting her sister Linda, who was being sued by a neighbor for property damage. Linda had allowed tree branches from her yard to destroy the neighbor's fence, and had refused to pay for repairs. It was a simple case, one Linda was clearly going to lose. But Karen had other plans. She had been plotting for weeks to expose Judge Judy as biased and unfair. Her twisted plan was to record footage secretly, then post it on social media with captions claiming Judge Judy was rude, discriminatory, and attacking her because of her size. Karen wanted to go viral. She wanted to become the victim hero of the internet, the plus-size woman who stood up to the mean judge and exposed her cruelty to the world. What Karen didn't know was that her plan was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. When security confiscated her phone, they didn't just find the recording of Judge Judy, they found something far more damning. A later investigation of her phone revealed drafts of social media posts already written and ready to publish. Screenshots showed planned captions that read, "Judge Judy attacks plus-size woman in court," and "Famous judge exposed for discrimination." But it got worse. Karen had already contacted local news stations trying to tip them off about a discrimination incident that was about to happen in Judge Judy's courtroom. She had it all planned out, scripted like a movie before she even set foot in that courthouse. The group chat messages on her phone were perhaps the most revealing. In conversations with her friends, Karen had written, "Watch me destroy her reputation and this is going to make me famous." She had researched courtroom filming laws, knew exactly what the rules were, and had deliberately chosen to ignore them. Why? Because Karen believed she was above the rules. She believed that if she got caught, she could simply play the victim, claim discrimination, and the court would back down out of fear of bad publicity. She had done it before in her neighborhood, and it had worked every single time. This was Karen's pattern, a pattern that had repeated itself for years. She was always the victim, never taking responsibility for her own actions. Her neighborhood reputation was so toxic that multiple neighbors had given testimonies about her behavior. One neighbor described how Karen filmed everyone without permission, capturing people in their own yards, their children playing, their private moments, then threatening lawsuits if they confronted her about it. "She weaponizes victimhood," the neighbor said. "She does something wrong, records your reaction, then claims you're attacking her." The HOA had even banned Karen from attending meetings because she would secretly record discussions, then edit the footage to make herself look persecuted and share it online to harass board members. Karen had gotten away with this behavior for so long that she truly believed she was untouchable. She thought she could walk into Judge Judy's courtroom, break the rules and manipulate the narrative to make herself a viral sensation. She thought she could do the same thing to America's most beloved judge that she had done to her neighbors, her HOA, and everyone else who had ever crossed her path. Karen thought she could win this game. She thought wrong. After the phone was confiscated, most judges would have moved on, returned to the case at hand, and dealt with the disruption later. But Judge Judy is not most judges. She sat back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Karen's face, and said 4 words that made Karen's blood run cold. "Bailiff, I want to see what's on that phone." The courtroom went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face, which had just started to return to a normal color, immediately drained of all blood. Her mouth opened in panic. "You can't do that," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "That's invasion of privacy. You have no right." Judge Judy's expression didn't change. If anything, a slight smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You forfeited privacy," she said slowly, deliberately, "when you illegally recorded in my courtroom." She paused, letting the words sink in. Courtroom rules allow full investigation of any device used to break the law or violate court procedures. "You want to play games in my house? We're going to see exactly what game you are playing." The bailiff took the phone and stepped to the side, scrolling through its contents. Karen sat frozen in her seat, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with terror. She knew what was on that phone. And now, so would everyone else. The bailiff's face changed as he scrolled. His eyebrows raised. He looked at Judge Judy and nodded grimly. "Your Honor," he said, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom, "there are multiple recordings of you from different angles just from today. There are also recordings from the courthouse hallways and waiting areas. But that wasn't even the worst part. There are also pre-written social media posts with captions already prepared, screenshots of group conversations discussing plans to defame you, and evidence of contact with news outlets." The courtroom erupted in gasps and shocked whispers. Karen's face went from white to red to white again, a look of pure terror in her eyes. Judge Judy held out her hand. "Let me see those posts." The bailiff connected the phone to the courtroom's display screen, and suddenly, Karen's planned social media posts were visible to everyone. The captions read, "Judge Judy attacks plus-size woman in court," and "America's favorite judge exposed as bully," and "She wouldn't treat a thin person this way." Judge Judy read each one aloud, her voice dripping with contempt. The courtroom audience's reaction was a mixture of gasps, disbelieving laughter, and heads shaking in disgust. Some people actually booed. Karen slumped in her seat, wanting the floor to swallow her whole. Judge Judy looked directly at Karen, her gaze piercing. "So this was premeditated defamation? You came into my courtroom with a plan to destroy my reputation with lies." Karen's hands flew up defensively. Those were drafts. I wouldn't have actually—" Her voice trailed off pathetically. Judge Judy cut her off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Stop lying. You came to my courtroom with malice and lies. Big mistake." The finality in her voice left no room for argument. Then Judge Judy did something that made the situation even worse for Karen. She turned her attention to Karen's sister, Linda, who had been sitting at the defendant's table looking like she wanted to disappear. "Is this the kind of support system you have?" Judge Judy asked, her voice sharp. Linda's face flushed with mortification. She stood up quickly, shaking her head. "Your Honor, I had no idea she was going to do this. I told her not to come. I told her to stay home." Karen suddenly stood up, shouting across the courtroom, "I was helping you. I was trying to protect you." Linda turned to face her sister, and the look on her face was pure fury mixed with humiliation. "You're embarrassing me. You always do this. You make everything about you and ruin everything you touch." The family dysfunction was now on full display for everyone to see. Judge Judy watched the exchange with interest, then made a note on her papers. "Your sister's behavior reflects on your judgment," she said to Linda. "The fact that you associate with someone who plans defamation schemes tells me a lot about your character and credibility." And just like that, Linda's case, which she might have had a slim chance of winning, was essentially lost. Karen's stunt had cost her sister everything. Karen couldn't handle it anymore. She collapsed back into her seat and began crying. But these weren't real tears of remorse. These were manipulation tears, the kind entitled people produce when they realize they've been caught and are trying one last desperate play for sympathy. "This isn't fair," she sobbed dramatically. "Everyone's against me. This is discrimination." She tried the size angle one more time, her voice rising to a wail. Judge Judy stood up from her bench, and her voice, when it came, was like steel. "Stop. You are not a victim. You are a perpetrator caught in the act. Own it." Karen's tears stopped almost instantly, replaced by rage. "I want my phone back." "You can't keep my property." Judge Judy smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You'll get it back when I decide. After we determine if criminal charges are warranted." Karen's face went pale again. "Criminal charges?" she gasped. Judge Judy nodded. "Filming without consent in a restricted area. Attempted defamation, disruption of court proceedings. Yes, criminal charges." Linda's lawyer, who had been sitting silently through this entire disaster, finally stood up. "Your Honor, I must object to." Judge Judy cut him off immediately. "Sit down. Your client's sister committed these acts. Period. This has nothing to do with your case except that it shows the kind of people your client surrounds herself with." The lawyer sat down, defeated. Karen sat in her chair, destroyed, humiliated, and facing potential criminal charges. The woman who had walked into that courtroom with a plan to destroy Judge Judy had instead destroyed herself. Can you believe this Karen's entitlement? If you're loving Judge Judy's absolute destruction of this manipulative woman, drop a comment below telling me what you would have said to this Karen. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We expose entitled people like this every single day. Now let's see what happened next, because Karen's nightmare was just beginning. When court ended, security escorted Karen out while she screamed, "I'll sue! I'll call the news. Everyone will know about this." Judge Judy's final words cut through her tantrum. "I'm counting on it. Please tell everyone how you plan to defame me with lies." Outside, news cameras were waiting. A reporter confronted her. "Ma'am, we heard you were caught illegally filming with intent to defame. Is that true?" Karen fumbled, tried to spin her victim story, but when asked, "We also heard you've done this to your neighbors?" She panicked and fled. Karen's neighborhood exploded when the news broke. Group chats lit up. Finally, someone put her in her place. Neighbors shared their own horror stories of Karen's recording harassment. The HOA held an emergency meeting. Ring doorbell footage showed Karen filming homes without permission. Screenshots of her threatening messages surfaced. Records of 23 frivolous complaints were documented. The HOA president said, "We've been dealing with her reign of terror for 3 years." Online, the internet turned on Karen hard. Her pre-written defamatory posts went viral. Comments flooded in. She planned to lie about Judge Judy for clout, and this is what happens when Karens meet consequences. People she'd falsely accused came forward with their stories. Even Karen's sister posted publicly, "I am not responsible for my sister's actions. She has embarrassed our family for the last time." Family members supported the sister, criticizing Karen. Her isolation was complete. 2 weeks later, Karen received official charges: illegal recording, attempted defamation, disruption of court proceedings, and harassment. Desperate, she contacted multiple lawyers. All refused after seeing the evidence. One briefly took her case, reviewed the footage, and immediately dropped her. "You have no defense. You were caught red-handed with premeditation." Karen tried controlling the narrative. She posted Facebook rants claiming persecution and started a GoFundMe for legal defense against tyranny. GoFundMe shut it down for fraudulent claims. Her TikTok crying videos were destroyed in the comments. "You tried to lie about Judge Judy. Own your actions." The videos were mass-reported and removed. The HOA fined Karen $500 for each unauthorized filming incident. 23 documented cases totaled $11,500. She refused to pay, so the HOA placed a lien on her property. Her financial disaster mounted. Court fines, court costs, her sister demanding $5,000 for lost legal fees, and lawyer consultation fees. Total damages exceeded $22,000. When her phone was finally returned after 60 days, Karen discovered everything was saved as evidence. Cloud backups were subpoenaed. Every deleted message, every drafted lie, her entire digital footprint of harassment was documented. The phone she fought so hard to keep became the weapon that destroyed her. Neighbors avoided her. Family blocked her on social media. Her sister got a restraining order. Former friends vanished. Karen became the neighborhood pariah, taking different routes just to avoid people. She was completely alone. 6 months later, Karen still lives in the same neighborhood, but she's become invisible. The woman who once terrorized everyone now keeps her head down, avoids eye contact, and no longer confronts anyone. The phone confiscation broke more than just her plan. It broke her reign of terror. When her phone was finally returned after all legal proceedings, Karen immediately changed all passwords, but the damage was permanent. Everything had already been documented. Now she rarely uses her phone, paranoid about surveillance. Ironic. The woman who filmed everyone is now afraid of being filmed. The Judge Judy episode became one of the most watched in the show's history. Judge Judy's statement went viral. Entitlement is not a right. Actions have consequences. This woman came to destroy someone's reputation with lies. Instead, she destroyed her own with truth. The clip exploded across social media. "This is what happens when Karens meet justice," people commented. Judge Judy was praised for protecting her courtroom and exposing a fraud. Meanwhile, peace returned to Karen's neighborhood. Children play outside without harassment. Neighbors socialize without fear. HOA meetings returned to normal. One neighbor said, "It's like a weight lifted off the entire street." Property values actually improved except for Karen's house, which dropped in value. Karen occasionally mutters about unfair treatment, but she no longer acts on her entitlement. Fear of consequences finally became greater than her ego. Her sister maintains a restraining order and refuses reconciliation. Karen deleted all social media accounts. The woman who wanted internet fame achieved it, as a cautionary tale. This story isn't just about one entitled Karen. It's about accountability in the age of social media. Karen thought she could film anyone, lie to everyone, and play victim forever. She thought wrong. Judge Judy represents a justice system that doesn't bow to manipulation. The community stood together against toxic behavior. When good people stand up to entitled bullies, the bullies lose. There are Karens everywhere trying to weaponize victimhood. They film without permission, lie without shame, and destroy without conscience. But they can only win if good people stay silent. Judge Judy didn't stay silent. The neighbors didn't stay silent. And neither should you. Stand up to entitled behavior. Speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. Because in the end, the truth always wins. Karen learned this the hard way. Her phone was confiscated, but what she really lost was her power. And she'll never get that back. If this story of sweet justice gave you satisfaction, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment below. What would you have said to this Karen? What punishment does she deserve? And most importantly, subscribe to this channel because we expose entitled Karens choosing beggars and toxic people every single day. These stories need to be told. These people need to be exposed. So let's stand together. Let's never let entitled behavior win. Subscribe, like, comment, and share this story with everyone who needs to see what happens when Karens face real consequences. Justice was served. Judge Judy won. Truth prevailed. And we're just getting started.